Manchester United held a commemorative service at Old Trafford today as the club paid their respects to the 23 people who were killed in the Munich air disaster 60 years ago. Manager Jose Mourinho and his current crop of stars attended the service, while Old Trafford legends such as Sir Bobby Charlto, who survived the plane crash, and Sir Alex Ferguson also attended. Former United manager Ferguson gave a reading before current United boss Mourinho and captain Michael Carrick laid wreaths in a service at United's home ground, Old Trafford. United estimated there were 2,000 of the club's fans there. The service included readings and poems ahead of a minute silence at 15:04 GMT, marking the time of the plane crash 6 decades ago. Fans have visited Duncan Edwards' grave in Birmingham to honor the youngest player to have been killed 15 days after the tragic plane crash. The ill-fated aircraft was bringing Matt Busby's youthful team back via Munich from Belgrade on February 6, 1958, after they had reached the European Cup semi-finals. The plane crashed on its third takeoff attempt in icy weather, costing the lives of 8 players and 3 members of the club's staff. 23 people died in total. Charlton and Harry Gregg are the only survivors out of the group of players who lived through the crash. Theresa May addressed the tragedy earlier today. "I know that today also marks an important and somber anniversary in the history of this great city. 60 years ago today, the Munich air disaster claimed the lives of 23 people, with many more suffering life-changing injuries. The crew, journalists and of course the talented footballers who died that day will never be forgotten. The day that is absolutely shown in red on this week's calendar is on Tuesday, a day that marks the 60th anniversary of the air disaster," Spanish forward Juan Mata wrote in his blog on United's website. "The victims will never be forgotten, they will always be remembered, and will be a part of United's history forever." The passion, determination, and courage shown by the club to carry on in those horrible moments have left an indelible mark forever. Marcus Rashford, who follows in United's proud tradition of blooding young, homegrown players, said he learned about the disaster as a young child. "It was when I was about 7 or 8, the 20-year-old striker told United Review. There were already little things about it around the club at that age, but then you start to learn more about it, and when you got to 15 or 16, that was when former academy coach Paul McGuinness really started to bring it to our attention. We used to watch a lot of the videos of games, especially from their FA Youth Cup runs, so we could see footage of what these players were like when they were young. It's so close to home, it touches your heart and helps you understand it, even though you weren't there." Ashley Young took to Twitter earlier in the day to urge his teammates to take inspiration from the likes of Charlton. He wrote, "Today we remember and mourn, but we must also take inspiration from the response to the tragedy and people like Sir Bobby Charlto. It is a privilege for all of us to still have him around and active at Manchester United." John Valentine, who sells scarves outside Old Trafford, said the Munich crash is ingrained in the history of this club. "If I come back in another 500 years it will still be being talked about," said Valentine, born in the year of the disaster. "You can't forget something like that a team nearly wiped out in a plane crash." Among the 8 who died, the player most revered is halfback Edwards, who survived the crash but succumbed to his injuries 2 weeks later. I missed out on those players, but I have spoken to people who did, and they talk about Duncan Edwards," said Valentine. Valentine says the fact around 2,000 United fans are due to go to Munich for the anniversary shows how important the events of February 1958 still are, even to the young. Kean Brown, who was at Old Trafford with his father and fellow die-hard United fan Everton on the day of his 9th birthday last week, reflected how it resonates even with youngsters, even though little footage remains of the Babes. "I keep him, Kean, up to date and brought him to see the memorial clock and see all the players who died. The anniversary is a big day for us," the 35-year-old said. Busby, who was twice given the last rites by a priest, remarkably survived the crash and guided United to an emotional win in the European Cup 10 years later, with Charlton captaining the side and scoring twice. "That was like the holy grail for the club," said Valentine. Because of the crash in 1958, Busby wanted the cup for those boys who perished in the club.